Hey guys, what's up? It's Alex or Nuzz, and this video is going to be a PVM progression roadmap video. What this video basically aims to do is show you what bosses to start out at when you're starting to PVM, and then show you the best bosses that I personally recommend you do and in which order to get better at PVM and increase your skills. This won't be a guide on the specific bosses, but more of explaining why they are so good to learn, what order you should do them in, a roadmap for bosses basically. We'll talk about what you can learn at each boss, which skills you can implement, and how you can progress. So first we're going to start out with where to start with PVM. In my opinion, the easiest way to start PVM is just to jump right in. Some people have never done any bosses before and just think it's too hard and don't even try. You need to get this mindset out of your head, and I promise you, you'll be progressing super fast and be on your way to being a solid PVMer. To start the bosses, I recommend, if you've never really done any good PVM, is Bandos. This boss is found in the God Wars dungeon and is a very, very easy boss in EOC. Your kills will range from anywhere between 15 seconds to about a minute, depending on your level of DPS. Now, the reason that I recommend this boss should be your first boss in your PVM journey is because if you're just starting out in PVM, it's a good way to learn how and when to use your abilities without having to really be in harm's way, while you're still killing a boss and getting loot. Something I would recommend doing while killing Bandos is to really focus on getting your ability rotation down in terms of damage. If you're maging, make sure to Sunshine. If you're ranging, make sure to Death Swiftness, and look up and find an ability rotation that works for you. And this is when you'll try to get it down to a science where you can do your rotation perfectly every time. You're going to want to set up your keybinds. There are tons of keybind guides on YouTube, and find ability keybinds that are comfortable for you. Of course, a lot of you will be using Revolution, and that's okay, but things like thresholds, I highly recommend you input manually because that will really help you. So like Wild Magic, Asphyxiate, Sunshine, Ultimates, and Thresholds, I highly recommend that you learn early to implement them manually. And at somewhere like Bandos, you can soul split and really take minimal damage and be able to strictly focus on damage and ability rotations, which is why I recommend Bandos as my first boss in our PVM progression roadmap. Next, we are going to move on to something a bit more challenging, Hellware. Out of all the God Wars 2 bosses, I feel like Hellware is the absolute best for introducing new PVMers into different boss mechanics and show them how to use defensive abilities. If you don't know, Hellware has 4 special attacks that you have to deal with. You'll need to Resonance Hellware's Bleed, you'll need to use Devotion and Freedom on Hellware's Frenzy move, you'll have to move and dodge his Nature's Aid, although you won't have to move that far, and you'll have to kill Hellware's wolves that he summons. This is a great boss because you can use your DPS rotations that you mastered at Bandos in the last step, and basically all you have to learn is a way to sprinkle in defensives at the right times to deal with Hellware's attacks. This may seem difficult at first, but we are just adding one small extra step, remember that, a few defensive abilities. Once you get enough practice, you'll be a Hellware master, and you'll also make a great amount of money as Hellware drops are really good for profit. I have a Hellware guide that I will link in the description, and if you're interested in a more in-depth look at taking on Hellware, once you have mastered Hellware, you should have a good sense of DPSing while also using a few defensives to avoid attacks. A lot of people don't know how useful defensives are, but you really need to know how to use every single one of them and really get used to using them in your rotations for certain bosses, and Hellware is a great way to introduce you to defensive mechanics and how to use your abilities, as when you're doing things for higher level PVM like Elite Dungeons, Virago, Telos, Next Angel of Death, Calfight King. All these places are going to require you to DPS, but also to learn how to use defensive abilities at the right times. Now, after Hellware, this is when we move on to the next stage of your PVM progression, which is Araxor. Now, trust me, Araxor may seem daunting, but it was extremely daunting in 2014 when it was released, and nowadays, with all the powerful upgrades, Araxor is not nearly as scary as he used to be. But, that being said, this boss will still push you to your limits, and you may feel discouraged at first, but trust me, you can do it with enough practice and perseverance. The main focus at Araxor is not only using your DPS like we learned at Bandos, and your defensive that you learned how to use at Hellware, but now we add a third element to the mix: movement. Araxor requires a lot of movement. At places like Bandos and Hellware, you may have to move a few steps, but at Araxor, you'll move much, much more. The fight basically consists of going through different phases and leading Araxor through different paths. I recommend Darkness Path or Acid Path for beginners, and to stay away from doing Araxor when the minion path is open. This will help you get a grasp on the boss in a safer way. Learning to be able to move through the Darkness Path or Acid Path and continue to deal damage, avoid Araxor swipe attack, use defensives to avoid special attacks, and you will even have to learn to prayer switch and run around on the last phase. This boss will truly prepare you to be elite at PVM. Araxor is very unforgiving, so you may want to charge up your Ring of Death or start in practice mode with a full yak to get the basics down. But after you can do Araxor consistently from 0 to about 100% in Rage without dying too much, you will be ready for the final stage of your PVM progression, which is Telos. The final stage for PVM progression that I recommend is Telos. Telos is extremely hard to master. I haven't even come close to mastering it, but it is a boss that has increased my PVM skill dramatically, and I have without a doubt seen myself grow in terms of DPS, food preservation, and dealing with mechanics immensely over my 1100 kills and 2 to 3 years of killing the boss. When you start off at Telos, you'll be at 0% in Rage, which is easy to force your way through without dying if you eat enough food. Telos has moves like the Uppercut, which you have to use Surge or Escape to avoid at the exact right time. Telos also has the Hold Still attack, which you'll need to Freedom and Resonance or Anticipate and Resonance. He has a Tendril attack, which you'll need to deal damage at the right time to break through his Tendril, which, harps on our DPS and using abilities at the right time. Telos has a ton of beams that you'll need to go in and do certain things, so there's a lot of movement involved. Telos has a lot of phases and also gains new abilities he can use throughout killing Telos. Another interesting thing about Telos is Telos can be stunned. So basically, you can stun Telos, and this is where you will really learn to use your stuns at the right time and get as much damage in as possible. This is the first boss that you will actually be stunning to halt the boss from using special attacks and to phase the boss into different phases and things like that. So this is really when you will learn truly to use all your tools to your advantage when it comes to PVM. Now, when you start off at Telos, you will be at 0% in Rage, which, like I said before, is really easy to brute force your way through. But the higher you go in Rage, the harder Telos hits, the more unforgiving he becomes if you miss one of his special attacks or mistime a surge for the Gillinor attack. As the ultimate goal of your PVM progression, I would set yourself a high goal of the Warden title. Now, this means getting a kill of Telos at 500% in Rage. But to start, I would try to consistently get kills from 0 to 99% in Rage. After this, you unlock Phase 5 at 100% in Rage, and the fight becomes totally different. This is by far one of the most challenging boss phases in the game, and while I can do it very easily now, my first attempts, probably first week on phase 5, were absolutely disastrous, but I've truly come a long way from that. Telos is the ultimate boss of honing your skills and progressing, and this is why I recommend it as your final challenge to really hone in on your PVM skills. I will put a link in the description to my friend Bibzu7's Telos guide, which is extremely long and extremely in-depth on all the mechanics and everything you need to know about Telos. I will also try to find an Araxor guide I can put in the description, but if I don't find one, I'm sure you can look one up and find some pretty good ones. And now we're going to get into the final comments and just some overall tips. Alright guys, so my final comments is I just want to motivate you guys and tell you guys that you can do it. A lot of people get really nervous about PVM, they don't know where to start, and I was in that same boat too. But really, it's just progression. It's really like anything. You know, when you start out, you know, let's say Telos, I guess we'll talk in like something like math terms, because most people have taken some math classes, whether you're in high school, college. You start out doing something like, you know, in college, you'll probably take college algebra. And then after that, there's calculus, calculus 2, and more advanced maths. You're not going to go into college and immediately take calculus 2 unless you already have some experiences in the last classes. So just like PVM, you're not going to go in and immediately jump to Telos, because you'll be overwhelmed, you'll die a lot, you won't do good, and you'll be demotivated. What you're going to do is you're going to start at Bandos to build up your confidence and learn how to DPS properly. Then you'll go to Hellware to kind of learn how to sprinkle in defensives and just learn how to use your defensives properly and actually fight a real boss with some mechanics. Then Araxor will of course be your true test and will be a way to use defensives, DPS, prayer switch, and move all at the same time. And then Telos is truly the boss that you can see your progression grow. You can start out at 0 in rage, go to like 99% in rage, and then you kind of break into a tier of 200, 300 in rage. That's a really decent tier. You'll get up to 500, which is, you know, if you can do 500% Telos, you're a pretty good PVMer. And then there's the 1K, 2K, 4K in rage, which is the absolute 0.1% of PVMers, the absolute elite PVMers on Runescape. So there's a lot of room to grow. And I know I'm rambling here, but I really want to motivate you guys to do PVM, and I hope this roadmap kind of helps you out. Let me know in the comments if you're going to start at any of these places in the roadmap and where you're going to start, and I look forward to seeing how your journey progresses. If you like this video, please leave a like below. It helps push the video out, and it just helps a lot. Make sure to comment, tell me what you think, and don't forget to subscribe for a ton more RS3 content like this. And again, also thank you to my channel members. You guys are amazing, and if you'd like to support my channel, get cool perks, like I'll give you tips for PVM, I'll add you on Discord, we do boss masses, live streams, there's a members only Discord room, stuff like that. Be sure to click the join button below to see the perks, click the link in the description or the box that pops up on screen now. So thank you guys for watching, kind of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next video.